Good. Good evening, everyone. I'm now calling this meeting to order. Welcome to today's City Council regular meeting on Monday, December 13th. If you could please stand for tonight's Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. City Clerk, can you take roll call, please?
Member Anderson?
Present.
Member Newnenkamp?
Present.
Member Russell?
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
Here.
Member Wink?
Present.
Member Woodward?
Present.
Mayor Sierra?
Present.
All members present.
Thank you. Agenda item 4 is the study session topics. We don't have any tonight. And then moving on to consideration of minutes of the previous session. Any changes to the minutes from the December 6, 2021 meeting? Seeing none, can I get a motion for approval?
I'll move the minutes.
Thank you,
Second.
Member Woodward. Thank you, Member Anderson. Can we please vote?
Member Anderson?
Aye.
Member Newnenkamp?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
Aye.
Member Wink?
Aye.
Member Woodward?
Aye.
Mayor Sierra?
Aye.
All votes have been cast. Let the record show 7 ayes.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 6, there are no appointments, communications, proclamations, or recognition. And moving on to scheduled public comment, there is none tonight. And then also moving on to agenda item 8, recognition of unscheduled public comment. Do we have any tonight, City Clerk?
We do not have anybody signed up right now.
I know we see members of the public. Anybody want to use 3 minutes to speak tonight? Thank you for acknowledging. You notice I was looking right in your direction. Thank you very much, Kathleen. I appreciate it. Thank you. So moving on to agenda item 8, consent agenda items. This is actually just, I think we actually removed everything on there, so it's just for wording purposes only. So 8C1, I believe, Mayor Pro Tem Ward, you asked that we remove this item from consent agenda item. Is that correct?
I did. Is now a good time to ask my question?
I think this would be a good time. So City Manager, is anybody that we need to bring up in order for this question? I believe that Mayor Pro Tem Ward. But I guess Mayor Pro Tem Ward, do you want to go ahead and bring up your comment?
Yeah, so I've noticed that this is a resolution, and the language of the resolution, it is a resolution to give an annual pay increase to the Municipal Court Judge. It gives the percentage of the pay increase, but it does not give the pay before and after the pay increase. So the reason why I pulled this is because I think going forward, when we do these types of resolutions, inclusive of this one, for historic purposes and transparency purposes, we should include that information in the resolution.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Ward. City Manager Lewis, any comments?
I believe that information was to be included in the council cover page comments.
Yes, the information is included in the packet. My concern here is that the information is not on the resolution that we are passing. So it doesn't have to do with not having the information. I believe it would be appropriate to actually place these numbers on the resolution, which is what I would like to introduce an amendment to do.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Ward. Do you want to go ahead and raise that amendment tonight? All right. Well, first, do we want to make a motion for 9C1? Mayor Pro Tem Ward, so, are there any other comments from City Council? Before we actually get to the motion, are there any other comments from City Council on this? Or on Mayor Pro Tem Ward's comment?
I have a question. Is this a good time?
Member Newnenkamp, yes?
Sorry, thank you.
Is this information easily accessible to the public anywhere else on the city website? And if so, can you tell me where?
City Attorney Niles?
Sorry, Mayor, I was waiting to be recognized. Yes, pursuant to the resolution adopted by City Council on September 8th, that was provided, and it was listed in that resolution as $153,323.60 starting in the first pay period of January 2021. So I would be happy to apply the 3.5% increase to that amount and include the specific number in the resolution.
Thank you, City Attorney Niles. Member Russell?
Thank you, Mayor. Is it necessary, City Attorney Niles, to put that in there? I mean, because it is public information elsewhere.
It's not necessary from a legal perspective. However, I think Mayor Pro Tem Ward wanted it for informational purposes. And so to that end, it's perfectly fine to include, but legally, we're not required to include that.
Did we include it on the city manager's salary increase and the city attorney's salary increase?
We did not. It was drafted almost identical to this one. And the reason we drafted it that way is because City Council adopted a 3.5% increase for all city employees. So we just mirrored the City Council language in the budget.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Any other comments from council?
I have a comment. I'm just wondering if it is a matter of public record or both of those positions being employees, if that's a personnel type matter where salary isn't.
It would be open record. Well, for one reason, both the city manager and the city attorney have written contracts with the city that establish the basis of our compensation, and all city contracts are open record. So for that reason alone, it is open to the public.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
Yeah, I'll just elaborate a little bit more on my concern here. I know full well that any citizen in any given year can submit a core request and get the salary of any city employee. What I'm more concerned with here is a preservation of the historic record. If I want to know how much the municipal judge made in 2018, for instance, that record is a little more difficult to obtain. But going forward, if I am looking for salary information for 2022 and what the basis of that salary information was, there will be a resolution that says we increase the salary by 3.5% from this number to this number. So on an annual basis, we'll be giving a baseline for the historic record. I don't see any harm in placing the numbers in the resolution, and this decision is not informed by what we did in the mayor or the manager or the attorney's previous resolution. Going forward, this is the process that I would like to see. I happen to have overlooked this on the last go-round. I don't need to re-adjudicate that, but I would like to apply this process going forward.
City Attorney Niles, any other comments?
I apologize, I did not turn that off, but I have done the math, and 3.5% from the 2021 salary would be $158,689.93, and I'm happy, in fact, I've already typed that into the draft resolution in the event council would like to amend the resolution to include that number.
Thank you, City Attorney Niles. Member Noonkamp?
I just have a clarifying question, City Attorney Niles. Based on what you said previously, was the salary information included in a previous resolution? And would this, so adding it here would just be consistent with the resolutions that council has already voted on? Is that correct for a municipal judge?
Yes, it was in last year's resolution. The reason we worded it a little bit differently is because last year's resolution was based upon a salary survey, and this year's salary was based on the increase provided to the city organizationally, which is why we drafted it the way we did.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any other comments from council? If not, may I get a motion?
I move to approve 9C1.
Can I get a second?
I will second it.
Perfect. Any other comments from council? Mayor
I would
Pro Tem
like to
Ward?
move to amend. which is an appropriate motion at this time, unless I am
No,
not
you got it right.
correct. So I move to amend the motion on the table to include the current salary of $153,323 and the new salary, $158,689.93 in the text of the resolution.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Ward. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Second on the amendment. Any other comments? If not, can we please vote? On the amendment?
On the amendment. Member Anderson?
Aye.
Member Nunnenkamp?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
Aye.
Member Wink?
Aye.
Member Woodward?
Aye.
Mayor Sierra?
Aye.
All votes have been cast. Let the record show 7 ayes on the amendment.
Perfect. So now that we have an amendment, we just now, any other comments on the vote of the, how do I phrase this? I'm trying to think. Motion on the table. There we go. Any comments? Mayor Pro Tem Ward.
I'll be supporting this tonight. I am supportive of annual cost of living increases for our staff, including the municipal judge.
Thank you. Any other comments from council? If not, can we please vote?
Member Anderson?
Aye.
Member Nunnenkamp?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
Aye.
Member Wink?
Aye.
Member Woodward?
Aye.
Mayor Sierra?
Aye.
All votes have been cast. Let the record show 7 ayes.
Thank you, everyone. Moving on to agenda item 8C2. This is the Information Technology Department is renewing the Microsoft Enterprise Licensing Agreement. It's a 3-year agreement totaling $883,123.47, which is $294,374.49 annually. And I believe, Member Russell, you asked that we take this off consent agenda, so I'll open the discussion to you.
Thank you. And so my question was, hang on just a second. Oh, this one. Because this is a multi-year contract, and I guess my question was, I don't have this one written on the front of my paper, the, can city council cancel this contract in subsequent years if there is insufficient funds? And so, go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. So Rita, the answer to your question, since the Microsoft agreement is being purchased through Insight Public Sector, they already have a contract with the state of Colorado. And in your packets there was an amendment to the contract. It's called, let me read it here. It's the participating addendum, Exhibit A, and it includes all the state-specific terms in the contract. So and in that contract of Section 14, Item B, let me read it to you, that allows us to terminate the contract in the middle of the agreement with no penalties to us if the money wasn't appropriated in the budget. So it says financial obligations of the state payable after the current fiscal year and contingent upon funds that are proposed being appropriated, budgeted, and otherwise made available. So if the funds aren't appropriated during the budgeting process, yes, we can cancel that. But there's other impacts that happens because of the licensing.
Okay, right. And I appreciate that. I mean, I know that we've done these before, and I know that it's generally written in our contract because of Tabor, but so they will honor that. I mean, it wouldn't necessarily be the state, and I totally understand that we do not intend to cancel that because we need it. But if something happened, we would be able to.
That is correct, yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Member Russell. Any other comments from council? If not, can I get a motion?
I move to approve 9C2.
Thank you, Member Russell. Can I get a second?
I'll second that.
Member Wink, thank you so much. Any other comments from council? If not, can we please vote?
Member Anderson,
Aye.
Member Newnenkamp,
Aye.
Member Russell,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward,
Aye.
Member Wink,
Aye.
Member Woodward,
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show, 7 ayes.
Thank you. And the city clerk just alerted me that we actually had the wrong agenda item number. So this is actually 9B2 that we're, or excuse me, 9B3 that we're now going to be speaking to, which is 2022 outside legal services for items related to the city center, I believe. Member Russell, you had a comment on this as well.
Mayor, point of order. I believe it's 9C3. On the agenda, it reads as 9C3.
Oh, okay. I see it here. Yeah, I got that blocked off. So yeah, 9C3, you're correct. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Ward. Member Russell.
Thank you. So my question here is, in the statement of work Schedule A on page 1, paragraph number 3, I asked to define the roles of the respective attorneys and any conflicts of interest that could arise from this arrangement. Whoever.
I'm happy to take this question, Councilmember Russell. This is an agreement for specialized attorneys with expertise in redevelopment issues to provide outside legal counsel to the city. But because all of these issues relate to EAF and EAF's mission and EAF's duties and EAF's dissolution, EAF has agreed to fund the legal services provided because they do benefit from them as well, and they are related to EAF's mission. So in that end, we don't anticipate there would be a conflict of interest because these attorneys also do represent the city, even though EAF has agreed to pay the invoice because it benefits EAF.
Okay, and so I guess along those lines, because all the directors of EAF are city employees, I guess my next question for you, and I know you answer this for me, is who do you represent?
The city is my client, so and I'm representing the city as a whole, the best interests of the city. And you're right, the EAF board is city department heads currently, and so they are in a situation where their loyalties may be divided if EAF's interests would be not aligned with the city. And I think that is an issue. And that's one of the issues that is fueling from a staff's perspective, a basis for dissolution of EAF, because that's not a position we want our city employees to be in. So we haven't faced that issue. If there is a conflict between the EAF interests and the city city interests, then we will have to have another conversation about that. But to date, we have not been adverse, and we have not been in conflict with each other.
Okay, so I guess one of my questions is then, who really represents city council? I mean, are we under your umbrella as city, but I guess what I'm asking is, we need to make sure that city council has representation also.
That is actually a very complex question, one in which almost every CLE I go to, we talk about. Because an organization as a client, who specifically is your client? I interpret that as a majority of city council. Whatever they direct me to do, that's the official action of the city, and that's who I represent. So to that end, I don't represent any council members' individual interests, but I advance the city interests as a whole, or as directed by 4 members of city council.
And you also advise us not to do anything against the law, right? So in that sense, you're more protecting the city also, because if we decided to violate the law, we could be held liable for that.
Yes, certainly. And it's always my goal that no one at the city violates the law, so, as I'm sure it is yours as well. So, but my only loyalty is to the city, so that's the only party that I represent.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Member Russell. Any other comments from council? If not, could I get a motion?
I'll move item number 9C3.
Thank you, Member Woodward. Could I get a second?
Second?
Thank you, Member Noonenkamp. Any other comments from council? If not, can we please vote?
Member Anderson,
Aye.
Member Noonenkamp,
Aye.
Member Russell,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward,
Aye.
Member Wink,
You're on mute, Member Wink.
I'm not.
Oh, now we hear
we
you.
heard you.
Yeah.
Member Wink? Aye. Member Woodward,
Aye.
Mayor Sierra,
Aye.
let the record show, 7 ayes.
Thank you, everyone. Moving on to item 10, public hearing items. There is no public hearing tonight. Moving on to item 11, ordinance, resolutions, and motions. So 11A1 is approval of ordinance on first reading after temporary extending COVID-related public consumption areas. City Council requests a presentation of ordinance to amend municipal code to permanently provide for authorized public areas for public consumption of alcohol. Here tonight is City Attorney Tamara Niles to run through recommendations for City Council on approving bill for ordinance for public consumption areas in the city of Inglewood. City Attorney Niles.
Thank you, Mayor. This is the third time that we've addressed this issue, so I did not bring forward the same PowerPoint that we've given 2 other times. But a quick recap. We brought this issue to City Council after the state of Colorado no longer stayed the ability of cities to authorize public consumption on public right-of-way. That had been stayed, that law had been stayed pursuant to an emergency order. So we brought that issue to City Council. City Council directed us to draft an ordinance, which we did, and then brought it forward to City Council at a public meeting. At that public meeting, City Council directed us to initiate some additional public outreach efforts to gauge affected business owners' positions on this issue, and to revise the ordinance to provide some different options with legal descriptions for different areas that City Council may wish to authorize for public consumption. We did work with the Englewood Downtown Development Authority to reach out to impacted businesses. We did receive 2 responses, and one was, we agree with the first one. So we didn't receive a lot of public comment, either in favor or against the proposal from affected businesses within the areas. The public comment that we did receive was from a business owner that I had reached out to, because the city of Inglewood only has one business that's licensed currently for to-go cocktails. So that was the one business that we had spoken with. So if the council's goal is to allow people to purchase a cocktail at a business license for to-go cocktails and then drink it outside, we had spoken with them, and they were the people that provided a pretty substantive response. When reviewing the proposed ordinance to allow public consumption, they suggested that we add in specific areas, or I'm sorry, specific times for public consumption, not just do a free-for-all 24/7. So to that end, as you can see on the screen in front of you and the ordinance in your packet, I did bold a proposed time, which is during the hours of noon to 1 a.m. I provided noon because that could be some sort of weekend event, and then 1 a.m. because the licensed business is open past 1 a.m. Also, the licensed business that's licensed for to-go cocktails also suggested that council consider only allowing public consumption of alcohol purchased from a business that is licensed for to-go cocktails. It was written, it just provided an exception to open public consumption. But if the purpose of the council is to encourage people to still go to restaurants and bars, get a cocktail from there, and then take it to a public area to drink for perhaps social distancing or just to enjoy the beautiful weather we have here in Inglewood, then they suggested that council consider adding in that requirement, that it can't be any alcohol, it can't be something you brought from home, it has to be purchased in a downtown Inglewood business that's within the area. So to that end, I did go ahead and draft some hours because that was an easy addition. And then I provided 3 options in the proposed ordinance. Option A is city paseos only, which is I provided the legal description there in the 3400 block of South Broadway, both east and west in the middle of the block, kind of an open public area. Then option B is the current public consumption area excluding public rights of way, but does and also excludes the duck pond. So that's the 3200 block and 3400 block of South Broadway on the map, and we'll get to the map, so I'll give you a visual here in a minute. Then option 3 is sorry, I gave the description there. Then option 3 is the area that we currently have, except it excludes public rights of way for open public consumption because that's what's required by state law. So option C does include the duck pond as well. I'm sure council recalls we did do some outreach to the police department and determined that the duck pond has been the site of some criminal activity in the last year, and we are preparing to undergo a very large redevelopment project in that area. So we would not recommend option C at this time. Then if we can scroll to the public consumption map, just to remind you of the areas that we're talking about. This is the updated map that excludes public right-of-way. There we are. So there's the north section there in the 3200 block of South Broadway. And then if we scroll down, then there's both sides of Broadway in the 3400 block. Also at the very bottom shows the duck pond, but again, we wouldn't recommend that at this time, but perhaps after the redevelopment, we can reconsider it if that's council's direction. So at this time, we would request council provide direction as to hours, if we need to limit it to only businesses in the areas that are licensed for to-go cocktails, and which option or which area they wish to provide. And there's certainly no reason, if we get your direction tonight or further request for information, we're happy to take that back and bring it back to another meeting.
City Manager, or excuse me, City Attorney Niles, can you repeat the 3 questions that you're asking of us tonight?
Yes, the hours. If we want to limit the open consumption to specific hours, the area that we want to authorize for consumption of alcohol in public areas that don't include public rights of way, such as streets and sidewalks, and whether council wishes to limit the public consumption to drinks purchased from a restaurant or bar that's licensed to actually sell to-go cocktails.
Thank you, City Attorney Niles. Any comments from council? Councilmember Anderson.
Question, City Attorney Niles. Am I understanding correctly that you didn't get any further feedback from the area, the north area in the 3200 block?
No, we did not.
Because that was one of the questions I think that caused us to kind of table this. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Anderson. Member Russell.
Thank you, Mayor. So I think some of the businesses down in the 3400 block on Broadway have been able to set up furniture in front of their buildings. Would that area be considered part of the public right-of-way?
It depends. We have the ability to issue licenses, essentially lease certain portions of sidewalk or paseos or alleyways to private business. In that way, where there's, or in parking lots, that sort of thing. In that way, those businesses can expand their liquor license footprint, and so the state then authorizes them to serve alcohol for consumption on those areas. But they have to obtain a license from the city to be able to use it and then expand their liquor license.
Okay, so that wouldn't impact the way this ordinance is written now, correct?
No, this wouldn't apply to any business that has expanded their liquor license for outdoor areas.
Okay, thank you.
Any, Member Nunenkemp.
Thank you, Mayor. Can you help me understand how the hours we're considering tonight were reached, and why it's 1 a.m. and not 2 a.m.? You explained the noon piece, but what's the end there?
truthfully, it's because my mother told me nothing good happens after midnight. So I thought if you get your last cocktail at midnight, you should be done by 1 a.m. And nobody gave me input on that. But I thought by 2 a.m., that's getting a little bit late.
No, that's helpful. I just know the establishments in that area are open till 2 a.m., so I wasn't sure why the hour difference. So thank you.
Member Woodward.
Yes, my question is on the early hours, 12 noon. I think some of the restaurants down there that are serving breakfasts and stuff, I don't know, I know there's drinks in the morning, and in the summertime, that might be something that people would look forward to. So I would suggest maybe that we could go a little earlier than that.
And I think that's perfectly fine. I looked up Inglewood Grand's hours, who's licensed for takeout cocktails. Their example, I just pulled it up again. On Mondays, they open at 4. My thought was on weekend events, they may open earlier occasionally. So that's why I included noon, but it certainly can be earlier to catch that brunch crowd.
Okay.
Member Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. City Attorney Niles, another question for you. With regards to the to-go cocktails, the Paseos are adjacent to at least 2 businesses, one of which maybe has the to-go cocktails, but the other one directly adjacent to it is not allowed, doesn't have to-go cocktails apparently, but they do sell cocktails, and if they're directly adjacent to that property, no one would be breaking the law by getting just a cocktail and then stepping out into the Paseo there, would they?
Actually, they would.
They would.
But at any
is it regarding their license?
right.
Okay.
If they do not have a to-go cocktail license and they allow someone to leave their licensed premises with a cocktail, they would be in violation of their liquor license. So
the follow-up question then is, could their liquor license be modified without going through the state licensing requirement for to-go cocktails? Like,
they could modify their liquor license. They could expand their footprint, or they could get the to-go permit. It does not seem to be a very onerous process.
Okay.
It's just one that a lot of people haven't done yet. But I'm acting on the premise that more people will get it as the winter goes on.
Okay. Thank you.
Member Woodward.
Member Anderson, I believe you're talking about the west side of the street, and they have those leased areas from the city, so that is not included, correct? It's if they walked out of there with their drink.
Yes, on the Paseo on the west side of Broadway, there are some expanded areas to service certain restaurants. And as long as they have expanded their liquor license to include that area, they can serve alcohol within that section and allow people to consume alcohol within the boundaries of their licensed area.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from council? Member Anderson.
Thank you. So the other question is, if we don't say it's only to-go cocktails, then someone could actually BYOB to the Paseo. Okay, that's the main concern. Got it. All right,
Yes.
thank you.
Or they could purchase it from the liquor store and put it in a brown paper bag or something like that. They could get it from anywhere and
Right.
consume it in these areas.
Thank you, council. I guess now, if there's no other questions, can we just start one by one down the row on the questions that was asked by the city attorney? In terms
Point of
the-
order. We aren't,
Oh, that's right, that's
we're not
right.
supposed to
Yeah.
have discussion without a motion on the table.
Yeah, you're right. We haven't made a motion. So if no other questions, can I get a motion on 11A1?
I move to approve 11A1 with option A.
Thank you, Member Anderson. Could I get a second?
I will second that.
Thank you, Member Woodward. And Member Anderson, you said that was for option A?
Yep.
Thank you, members. And so I think option A does not specify hours or any of the other questions. So is that something that we would make an amendment on, or in terms to getting added? Member Anderson?
It is in the hours are already written in the motion, so I believe my motion, including option A, is already in the ordinance as written. So those, I am, by making the motion including hours of noon to 1, though somebody could make a motion to amend them. Am I correct on that?
Yes, that's correct.
And then just a further question on that. So then the second part of that is the way that it's written states that you do need to have the seal container as part of option A. Do I understand that correctly?
No, so option A provides for the city paseos only and the hours of noon to 1 a.m., because that's what I had written just as a starting point. I did not include in the draft anything regarding a requirement to only consume cocktails purchased to go from licensed businesses in that area.
Right.
So that would be an amendment.
Thank you. Thank you, City Attorney Niles. Member Russell.
Thank you. So, City Attorney Niles, is it legal then to purchase open container alcohol and carry it from the business that's not beside the paseo down to the paseo? Or that's on public right-of-way?
Well, it would only be legal if they were licensed to sell to-go cocktails. And you can transport it, you just can't consume it during the transport. So you would have to wait until you get into the paseo to consume it there. And on the paseos, we could provide some directional signage to notify the public of some of those rules.
Okay, thank you.
Member Woodward.
I would like to amend the starting time from 12 noon to 10 a.m.
So you want to change it from 12 noon to
That
10
as a
a.m.
motion?
in terms of the hours?
Yes.
Could I get a
As a
second on that
motion.
amendment?
I'll second it.
Second by Member Anderson. Any comments by council? Member Nunekamp?
Thank you, Mayor. I had a similar thought as you did, Member Woodward, about brunch and morning times. But I almost wonder if we're getting a little too restrictive, because should we extend it to 2 a.m. and then it's only doesn't count for, you can only have it for 8 hours, but then almost the rest of the day you can. And I am concerned, I want to make sure we empower our citizens to be able to be within this ordinance and not be out of step with it. And so I think with some of these times it could be confusing. And so I appreciate the amendment, but I'll be opposing it tonight just because I would like to remove the times altogether.
Thank you, Member Nunekamp. Member Russell.
Thank you, Mayor. I will be opposing this for a different reason. I believe that when a tavern closes at 2 o'clock in the morning, they close the doors. And so if you get a to-go takeout at 2 in the morning, you're already going to be violating the law. So, but I will be opposing this also, but for a different reason. Thank you.
Any other comments from council? If not, can we please vote on the amendment to change the hours to 10 a.m. to 1 a.m.? Well, you would like to change the time to
Yes,
10 a.m. from noon.
No, from 12 noon to 10 a.m.
Right.
Oh, I thought you
So
said
it would be
2.
10 a.m. through 1 a.m.
Oh, through 1 a.m.
Yeah, through 1 a.m. Could we please vote?
Member Anderson?
Nay.
Member Nunekamp?
Nay?
Member Russell?
Nay.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
Nay.
Member Wink?
Nay.
Member Woodward?
Aye.
Mayor Sierra?
Nay.
Let the record show 6 nays, 1 yes, does not pass.
Member Nunekamp.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to amend this ordinance to remove the times altogether for the reasons I previously stated. I understand the intention here, but I do think that it becomes a little bit confusing.
I'll second.
Second by Member Anderson. Any comments? If not, can we please vote on the amendment to remove the hours?
All right, Member Anderson,
Aye.
Member Newnenkamp,
Aye.
Member Russell,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward,
Aye.
Member Wink,
Aye.
Member Woodward,
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Nay.
All votes been cast. Let the record show 6 ayes, 1 nay.
Thank you. And now can we go ahead and, actually, Member Anderson.
I move to amend the ordinance to allow for only to-go cocktails from businesses in Inglewood that have that license.
Thank you, Member Anderson. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second by Mayor Pro Tem Ward. Any comments from council? Member Russell.
I just have a question. So does that mean to-go, businesses can sell to-go alcohol, but we're not going to allow it in the Paseo or anywhere other than what's in the ordinance?
City Attorney Niles?
Actually, I'm asking
Okay.
Councilmember Anderson what the intent was.
Oh, the intent was that you can only drink alcohol sold by a business that's licensed for to-go cocktails. You can't pick it up at the liquor store or, just bring your home brew to the Paseo, for example. Does that clarify?
Well, that clarifies, but is it tied to the ordinance?
Yeah, I was asking to amend the ordinance so that only the Paseo, only the place, the locations in the ordinance where to go or where drinking is allowed on public property would then be. I'm not saying that right, but.
I think my question is, and that was a good point, Councilmember Russell, is if we do option A, which is the city paseos only, there's no businesses within the city paseos. So is your amendment to authorize consumption on city paseos from alcohol purchased at any business in Inglewood that's licensed to sell to-go cocktails?
Well, that was my intention, such that if any, if we expanded this ordinance in the future, it would automatically include anything in Inglewood. So if we expanded to the duck pond once that project was finished, then it's already written into the ordinance that getting any to-go cocktail from any business in town would be allowed to drink there. So yeah, does that clarify?
That does clarify. Thank you.
Member Newnenkamp.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a quick question about the amendment. If we are to limit it to-go cocktails sold in our city, which I support, the spirit of this entire conversation is supporting our local businesses, can we sign that easily on the Paseo? And that's my only concern. How do we, again, empower our citizens to ensure that they are in compliance with this ordinance?
That's a good question. I think some signage could be very simple to say public consumption of alcohol purchased to go is authorized here. I'm sure we would word it much better, but I think we could, in a fairly few number of words, indicate that you can consume your to-go cocktails here.
Okay, thank you.
Member Russell.
Thank you, Mayor. The concern that I have about this is Inglewood is about 7 square miles. And if a person on South Broadway decides to sell to-go cocktails, or a person over in Southwest Inglewood at Federal and Bellevue decides they're going to sell to-go cocktails, then the implication is they would be allowed to transport that to the Paseo. And I think that's problematic.
Thank you, Member Russell. Any comments from council? Member Ward.
I don't actually have a problem with that. I think it complies pretty well with what's been done during the pandemic. If I go to Chili's at River Point, for example, or Riverfront, whatever it's called now, I can get a margarita up to a gallon in size to take home with me, or really wherever I want to take it. It just has to remain sealed while it's in the car. That's the requirement, as I understand it, under the current law, and that would be the requirement that we would be maintaining under this law. We don't really care where they drink it, as long as it's in the designated area or at their home. I don't share that particular concern.
Thank you, Member Ward. Any other questions or excuse me, any other comments from council? If not, can we please vote on the amendment to allow only sealed containers, to-go cocktails from licensed businesses?
Member Anderson?
Aye.
Member Nunnenkamp?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Nay.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
Aye.
Member Wink?
Aye.
Member Woodward?
Nay.
Member Sierra?
Aye.
All votes have been cast. Let the record show 5 ayes, 2 noes.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from council? If not, Member Russell.
So is this our last opportunity to weigh in before we're going to actually vote on the ordinance?
Looks like it. Member Russell, yes.
Okay, thank you. I will not be supporting this. I would have been more likely to support it without any of the options and any of the changes. But I think that we're opening Pandora's box, and I don't think it's wise for us to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Russell. Any other comments from council? Member Nunnenkamp.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to thank staff for taking the extra time to take another look at this. I know it was an extra step and extra outreach, but I think it was the right process, which really matters in this work, and to ensure that we are passing ordinances that are inclusive of our business community, and when we were making these changes, that they're well thought out and well reasoned. And so I appreciate the extra step and will be supporting this tonight.
Thank you, Member Nunnenkamp. If no other comments from council, can we please vote on the motion on the table, which is option A with no hours and to-go cocktails from licensed businesses only?
Right. Member Anderson?
Aye.
Member Nunnenkamp?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Nay.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
Aye.
Member Wink?
Aye.
Member Woodward?
Aye.
Mayor Sierra?
Aye.
All votes have been cast. Let the record show 6 ayes, 1 nay, the 1 nay being Member Russell.
Thank you. Moving on to 11C1, resolution authorizing submittal of a grant application in the amount of $22,750,000 to the Federal Emergency Management Agency for funding the South Englewood Flood Reduction Project. Oh, no, I lost my spot here. So staff recommends City Council approve the resolution to the FEMA for funding the South Englewood Flood Reduction Project. Public Works Director Maria DeAndre, is she online? Oh, there she is. She's in the back. And Stormwater Program Manager Carrie Evanson are here to present. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor.
Good evening.
Really close? Okay. Sorry, this is my first time presenting in front of you, so a little nervous and learning the technology, and I believe I have a presentation.
Don't worry, Director Van Rye doesn't know how to work the PowerPoint, so you should be good.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. I'm Carrie Evanson. I'm the new Stormwater Program Manager for the City of Inglewood. Thank you. I'll bring this a little closer so you can hear me. All right. Just to give you a little bit of background so you know what the project is that we're planning to, with your support, apply for some grant funding. It's the South Englewood project. It's the highest priority project that was identified in the Stormwater Master Plan. You may recognize it as Master Plan Project S1, S2. We also call it the South Englewood Flood Reduction Project. Really, the purpose of this project is to enhance the capacity of the city's storm sewer system, allowing more stormwater to flow through the system from upstream locations. And because of the nature of this project, it may be eligible for flood mitigation or hazard mitigation assistance through the Colorado Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Management, who is the agency that coordinates grant applications to the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA. So this would be for federal funds to fund a portion of this project. So the purpose of the resolution is to approve the authorization to submit an application to FEMA. So basically you're giving staff the ability to submit this grant through DHSEM for hazard mitigation assistance grant funding. For those of you that are not familiar with some of these acronyms and some of this grant funding that's out there, hazard mitigation assistance provides 75% federal funds to a 25% local cost share to fund stormwater infrastructure projects that reduce or eliminate long-term risk to people and property from future disasters, including floods, and basically gives us the ability to leverage our non-federal funds and stretch them, make them go a little bit farther by receiving some federal dollars. You may have be familiar with the Infrastructure Act that just passed as well. So there's some additional funding that looks to be available in these grant programs from FEMA. So we're in a good time frame here. There's never any promises when it comes to federal grant applications, but it looks like good timing to apply for some federal funds. Just to give you some numbers to this, overall, the ask for the project is $22,750,000. That's the total project cost as it stands right now. Of that, if the grant was awarded, 17 million of those, with 62,500, would come from federal funds, and then the city's match is at roughly 5.6 million. So with that, the city's match is available currently in the Stormwater Drainage Fund account under that account number, other improvements. So with that, staff recommends City Council approve by resolution the authorization to submit an application in the amount of $22,750,000 to the Federal Emergency Management Agency for hazard mitigation grant assistance.
You're a seasoned pro, Program Manager Evanson.
very much.
Any questions from council on today's presentation? Seeing none, can I, Member Woodward.
Yes, on the slide that's purpose of the project and the picture, which was the second, yeah. And I guess not having been here earlier, this may have been answered earlier and some other stuff. This new stormwater detention pond, where is the location of that?
So Councilmember Woodward, we are still in the process of determining exact locations. Right-of-way acquisition is currently ongoing. So an exact location has not been given out. We want to make sure that we actually have that property under contract. But we're looking at roughly the area of Stanford and Navajo. And correct me if I'm wrong on some of my streets. Because I'm still learning the area, but Public Works Director DeAndrea can help me with that.
I'll also add, Mayor, if I may, that this is the subject of an executive session in terms of property acquisition, Councilmember Woodward. Oh. So we have discussed this in executive session. We'll be glad to brief you on that property acquisition.
Okay. All right, and then just another question regarding...
Member Woodward, 1 second. I think the Public Works Director wanted to jump in.
Sure, yeah, just to clarify, we're looking in the general area, Ms. Evenson was correct, but generally along Windermere, both sides, both west and east sides of Windermere, generally between Stanford and Radcliffe area to Tufts.
Okay, well, and that probably answers what my next question was the pipe, the outlet pipe from the new stormwater detention goes into the existing pipe that I believe comes from Rotolo,
That is correct.
which didn't seem to make sense with the picture when you're right next to the river. So. I
Yeah,
think-
that's not to scale.
Yeah. Yeah, it isn't.
But the intent would be we're going to actually install new pipe from Rotolo west to wherever the pond ends up. And then there's existing pipes in Windermere that will go north to Oxford and then west along Oxford out to the South Platte.
Yeah. So in reality, probably Santa Fe is in between this new stormwater detention pond and the river, and probably Windermere and who knows what else. So, okay, thank you. That answers those questions.
Yes, Santa Fe is on there as well, between the pond and the river.
Yep.
Thank you, Member Woodward. Any other questions from council? Could I get a motion to approve 11C1?
I'll move 11C1.
Thank you, Member
Second.
Woodward. Member Noonenkamp, the second. Any other questions or any other comments by council? Seeing none, can we please vote? Oh, no, actually, can we please vote?
Member Anderson?
Aye.
Member Noonenkamp?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
Aye.
Member Wink?
Aye.
Member Woodward?
Aye.
Mayor Sierra?
Aye.
All votes been cast, let the record show, 7 ayes.
Thank you very much, Program Manager Evanson and Public Works Director DeAndre. Thank you so much for your information tonight. Moving on to 11C2, that's the strategic plan. So staff recommends City Council approve by motion revisions to the structure of the Inglewood strategic plan. Here tonight is Assistant City Manager Tim Dodd. Good evening, Mr. Dodd.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for having me back after last week's discussion. I believe I have a PowerPoint that's up. Great. So tonight my presentation will be relatively short. It will mostly focus on the public engagement portion that we hope, with your approval, to plan to start later this week. And certainly if there are questions or discussions on edits you would like to the strategic plan, at this point, feel that would be another great purpose for this evening. It is obviously important to point out that this is the plan that would be for the city that would ultimately be adopted by council. At this stage, it's really stop number 2 of many different stops that will be coming before you. As a reminder, the plan is to have this finalized or have it for your final approval in March. So there'll be several opportunities for you to weigh in on it. Really, for the public engagement process, we're really looking for the public to prioritize both the outcomes and the goals, and then to provide just general comments on the plan. So it doesn't need to be sealed up, tonight or in a few days when we do that. Just wanted to point out 2 modifications, though, that we did make to the plan based on feedback that we received from you last week. The first is based on Councilmember Anderson's comment about how there are many different goals that track into different outcome areas and goals. We worked with the graphic designer to include a table in the back of the document. It's right before the reporting section that basically shows the connection between different goals and different outcome areas. This table will become more robust as the projects become finalized in the late winter and early spring. We'll be adding projects that also track to different areas. The other change we made is in the tables that show survey data, and again, these are data points that essentially show what the public qualitatively thinks of services provided by the city. We do, as was mentioned last week, this is done by a national surveying company, and so they do provide us with benchmarks. Unfortunately, they don't provide us with the exact percentage that's the national average, but they do tell us whether our data from 2020 is equal to their other clients, their other customers, above or below. And so we did add a column showing that to provide additional context. As was mentioned briefly last time, we do hope with your approval again to start the public engagement process later this week. The plan is to use Englewood Engaged, which again was a platform that our communications department holds that we successfully used. I think we got over 200 votes, so to speak, prioritization rankings when we put ARPA funding possibilities on there. We also will, for people who may not have computer access, provide opportunities to use a pen and paper and submit feedback at places like the recreation centers, the hub here at the Civic Center, and also at the library. What we'll be asking people are, again, to rank the priority, to prioritize the outcome areas, to prioritize the goals, and then also if they have any general comments on the plan. We'll then, as has been mentioned before, in mid-January, package all that information and provide it to you before your retreat, which I believe will be held on January 29th. And it will, hopefully we'll be providing some information to you when you set priorities on that date. Again, prioritization is important for a couple reasons. Obviously, everything in the strategic plan is important, but having priorities will help us, again, with a few key points, which are bulleted here. It'll help us in the budget process. So as we start to enter the 2023 budget process, departments are able to submit what we call enhancements, which essentially is requesting funding for, it could be a new initiative, expanding an initiative, it could potentially be staff, a new program. And so really when we do get those submissions, we'll be asking them to tie them to the priorities that council sets in January. It'll also help staff just overall throughout the year know where to focus efforts. And then again, the quarterly reports that I provide to you, and again, one will be forthcoming this January, will include updates on everything in the plan, but will be kind of laser beam focused, so to speak, on the priority. So everything will be included, but we'll provide additional information on the priority areas for your review. Again, as has been mentioned before, there are several steps in this process. So tonight is step number 2. Again, the big asks for tonight are number 1, if you approve of us going forward with the public engagement process, and number 2, if you do have any modifications before we do that. Then the next step right there in the middle will be the public engagement process. In January, you'll hold your retreat. That is when, again, we'll be requesting that you set priorities. And there maybe will be different checkpoints between these last 2 boxes here, January and March, to check in with you to see if you have any additional projects that you'd like to add or any additional edits you'd like to make. And then we'll be presenting to you in March for your final approval. And again, just one last point that I wanted to make is, as you'll see, many of the metrics that we have in there, so these were developed kind of from the ground up from departments. While the city has kind of tried this, I think, a few different times, for the most part, this is the first time that we've tracked these measurements. And that's why they are what I call benchmark metrics. So they do not, very few have targets. And the reason is that we're really just using this year to baseline. By the time you approve this in March, many will have targets because as this year closes out, we'll be looking internally at data, and I'll be working with departments to start setting those targets in January and February for this coming year. So you will see more when it gets to kind of the final stage, but that's why you don't see targets for most of the metrics, because again, we're just starting out and we really needed to baseline and collect data so that we could use that data to set targets.
Thank you, Assistant City Manager Dodd. Any questions from council? Member Woodward.
Yes, I just would like to see if you would be able to verify from, on the benchmarks that with the national company that would be coming up with those, that these benchmarks are for like-type cities, that is, suburbs, and right next to, or in the first ring of the major city, as opposed to, I don't want to be compared to Lone Tree or Highlands Ranch or Broomfield. I mean, that isn't a fair comparison or a very good comparison in my mind.
No, we can talk to the vendor about that. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Member Noonan-Kemp.
Thank you, Mayor. I think citizen feedback on this plan is critical, and I'm so excited that that's the next step in this process. But I do have a question. We have projects open right now on Englewood Engaged, and we're heading into obviously a busy time. Do we have any kind of best practice about how many things we have open on Englewood Engaged at one time that we ask citizens for feedback on, so that there's not an overwhelm or we end up not getting participation because there's just so much?
I don't believe we have that information, but I can try to get that from our communications department. I think we are winding up one campaign right now, but I can't remember what that is. But, obviously the holiday season isn't probably ideal. So if you wanted to, have presented at the retreat the information that we have to date, but then keep the engagement process open through March, or at least February, we can absolutely do that too.
Okay, thank you. Can I go do another?
Go ahead, Member Nunekamp.
Just another question. I noticed throughout the plan, there are some goals that don't have projects. Sustainability doesn't have any benchmarks. Will the public see this actual document that we have here tonight, or will Englewood Engage be more broad over just the large top-line goals?
Thank you. The idea, and certainly it's council's pleasure, but the idea is that it would be basically the outcomes and the 40 right now goals. Sustainability is a special note. The reason those don't have benchmarks is we're waiting for the Sustainability Commission to be fully up and running in January. And also we're hopefully going to hire a sustainability coordinator relatively soon. So that was why they're relatively bare right now, because we feel that we'll have capacity to make those very robust in the next few months.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council? If not, can I get a motion for 11C2?
Mayor, may I make one comment?
Yes, City Manager Lewis.
I just want to point out that really we have 3 members of council who haven't directly weighed in to the strategic plan. So if you have some comments that you would like to jot down, and of course I'm talking about newly elected council members, but if you have some comments about this that you'd like to jot down, we can incorporate those before the final vetting, after the first of the year and into March. And we'll be glad to get those incorporated as well. But I think
Member Nunekamp.
Thank you, Mayor. If I'm the only one asking questions, then I'm going to keep going.
At this point, you are.
If you don't mind. I had a question around a couple things, just so I can understand, as City Manager Lewis just alluded to, that I'm new to this process. I didn't see any wayfinding or placemaking goals in the plan, nothing about belonging in community or community events. And so I'm just curious, was that intentional, or is that somewhere that I missed?
Not intentional. There should be some about community kind of engagement and events in the neighborhood section. There currently is definitely not a specific goal related to placemaking though. And so that's something that could certainly be added.
Thank you. I appreciate that information. And then one more, I noticed affordability is under well-being in the new section, but it's also under local economy and the benchmarks. And I'm curious the decision to put it in well-being and not in local economy.
Yeah, thank you. And again, that's certainly a decision that council can weigh in. It's at the staff level, we had a lot of discussions about whether it made more sense to be in community well-being or in a variety of different other sections. We did include it, I believe, in the crosswalk, showing that it does connect. Certainly, we could move it. I think we thought of it as well-being because there are different dimensions that drive. So everybody's well-being is different, right? And it's driven by different dimensions. And usually, people who are kind of in a point where they're having trouble affording things, their well-being is going to be relatively low or going to be impacted. So that was why it was included there, but it could certainly be moved, and it is cross-referenced in the back.
Thanks so much.
Any other comments from newer members of council? If not, I'm not new, but actually one thing that I did notice on here, I looked for it under well-being, but just, do we happen to have any goals around public art? I'm not sure if there was in another section, but I think that's something that I would like to see added.
Yeah, there are not right now, but certainly could be added.
Yeah, and if I could add to that, I think particularly since we've now heard from 2 council members about placemaking. I think public art would go in there. I think we can definitely add those. Regarding belonging and kind of connectedness, one of our goals under neighborhood goals is ensure neighbors are connected to one another. But so if I may ask a kind of a follow-up question to Councilmember Newnham, are you talking specifically about developing a sense of belonging to the community, to the neighborhood? Is there another way we could kind of wrap that into a different section?
Yeah, I think that the neighborhood program is fantastic and see that's well represented in the plan. But citywide events, citywide sense of community, I think is something that I see as something that's missing in the plan. Pride of place and belonging as a resident of the city and not just of your neighborhood, I think is something that we could work on.
Yeah, that's very helpful. I think we should actually refine this a bit, but under number 4 on neighborhood goals is ensure community and city events are shared throughout the community through a variety of projects. It's probably a little too specific to communication and not to the event itself. So would you like to see more events or just, really try to create a sense of place through our events or both?
For me, I don't think it has to be event specific, but I think that as the city grows and evolves, that we have to be incredibly intentional about placemaking and belonging efforts to ensure that we maintain cohesion, which is what we love about this city. And those things don't happen by accident, they happen through intention. And if I don't see it intentionally laid out in the plan, then it's a cause of concern for me. And so whether that be through a variety of issues, whether it's public art or it's pride in place, it's events, I'm curious what staff thinks those projects would look like, but I do see that as a goal that I would like to see added to the plan.
Perfect. Yeah, we can definitely add some to those. And it sounds like the other council members would agree with that direction. Great. We'll get some added.
Thank you, City Manager Lewis. And Member Newnham, any other questions from council? If not, can I get a motion for 11C2?
I move 11C2.
Thank you, Member Newnham. Can I get a second?
I will second 11C2.
Thank you, Member Woodward. Any further questions from council? Member Ward.
So I think now would be a good time to discuss 2 parts of the plan that are quite concerning to me. Both of them are on the governance goals page. So if we can go to that page. Item number 6, under revenue and finances. One of the key projects is to explore the use of red light cameras and photo enforced speed vans. I typically am willing to discuss just about anything under the idea that it might benefit the citizens in some way or another. This is not an item that I am willing to discuss. My mind is made up on this item right now. I don't need to hear anything else about it. I do not want this for the city of Inglewood. I don't see the benefit, and as a matter of fact, these devices are offensive to me in a number of ways. So I'm wondering if my fellow council members will support me in ordering the removal of this particular project from this plan. That's the first fork. I think we should probably address that one first.
Member Anderson.
My question is, how do we go about making modifications to this? Can we just make an amendment to remove an item that's listed on the plan at this point? Okay.
Yeah,
I would be
so.
supportive of a motion to remove those. I'm not a supporter of those kind of devices either. I think we have a lot of traffic. We have some traffic calming needs to do, but I don't like this measure of attempting to control traffic. I would rather build out our traffic calming program and add some areas to that in the strategic plan. But I don't think it's a good long-term solution to use red light cameras and speed cameras to enforce these things.
Thank you, Member Anderson. Mayor Pro Tem Ward.
So I move to remove use of red light cameras and photo enforcement speed vans from this plan.
Second.
Thank you, Member Anderson, for the second. Member Russell.
I just would like to weigh in. I agree with that assessment. And I think we're running into some constitutional areas also. So I am in support of that amendment. Thank you.
Member Woodward.
I am totally in support of that. Haven't been the benefactor of one of those that I wasn't even driving the car, but I received the ticket, which I promptly sent back to them and said, that isn't me. They can't enforce it because they can look at my license for my car, and that wasn't me. So, but for many, many other reasons too, I do not agree with that.
Thank you, Member Woodward. Any other comments from council? I'll just weigh in. I'm actually going to vote nay on this one. I just see it as exploring. It doesn't say that we're actually going to move forward with it, but I wouldn't be against it, and I have heard from citizens that have brought this up, but I could go either way on it. But for tonight, I'll just vote nay. Anything else? No? If not, can we please vote on the amendment set forth by Mayor Pro Tem Ward and seconded by Member Anderson?
Member Anderson?
Aye.
Member Noonan-Camp?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
Aye.
Member Wink?
Nay.
Member Woodward?
Aye.
Mayor Sierra?
Nay.
All votes been cast. Let the record show 5 ayes and 2 nays.
Thank you. And Mayor Pro Tem Ward, I think you had a second.
I do. So the second item is very likely more sensitive. And this is also on the governance goals page. Item 10, diversity and inclusion. And my concern is with the tracking of success on this. Percent diversity across the workforce. We've had a number of conversations on diversity, equity, and inclusion since I came onto this council. And I have had at least one private conversation with one of my fellow council members who assured me that diversity, equity, and inclusion is not about quotas. This screams quota to me. If we're saying that the goal of diversity, equity, and inclusion is to increase the number of people who fit in X racial group or X sexual orientation or X gender in our city, then we are engaged in an affirmative action program. And the only
Finish your sentence, but I'm in support of you. But finish your sentence, please.
the only thing, the only outcome that this measure tells me is that that's exactly what we're doing, is engaging in affirmative action. I want to see the city hire the best candidates. And Member Wink, please go ahead.
Thank you, Member Ward. So I am wondering if I can ask our city manager to support what Member Ward just said, because it was also my belief that programs around the globe probably, or certainly focused in our country, concentrated here, that are implementing strategies of diversity, inclusivity, whatever you want to call it. Oh, look, my little hand is up. They are indeed, as Member Ward is saying, they're not simply, let's hire X many of this person type and that person type. It's about developing a culture of inclusivity and acceptance, which is defined in much different terms. So I want to support Member Ward by asking our city manager if he can share a little bit more about what the outcomes actually are, because I think we can go down a bad path pretty quickly, and miss an opportunity really to grow as a city and as an administration. Thank you for letting me interrupt you, Member or Mayor Pro Tem Ward. I think this will support what you're saying. Is that okay to ask the city manager?
Certainly, I'll yield the floor.
And if I could, we have had a number of conversations about this, and Tim, if you can address.
Yeah, certainly. And so as you all are aware from the presentation we had maybe a month and a half ago now, the city is working on a diversity, equity, and inclusion program with a consultant. We do expect out of that there will be many different suggestions on measurements we can include in the plan. This is one that we did look at from best practices. It was something that kind of came out in a variety of different discussions at the staff level, just about not creating any kind of program, but just monitoring and tracking this. And that's really what it is right now. It's kind of and it is the only metric here. Again, the expectation is that probably the consultant working on that plan will propose a variety of others. So if you feel comfortable taking this out and waiting to see what's proposed, that's certainly an option.
Thank you very much.
So I'll just say that I feel very uncomfortable with its inclusion. The way I read it, how we will know we are on track to succeed, % diversity across the workforce. Implied in that to me is an increasing percentage of diversity across the workforce. And while that may be indicative of a diverse and inclusive environment, I don't support the use of that metric. So I would like that removed, and I'll introduce a motion at this time to remove that metric, how we will know we are on track to succeed, % diversity across the workforce from this plan, to be replaced with an item to be determined.
I'll
Okay.
second that motion.
Second by Member Wink. Any comments from Council Member Nunekamp?
Thank you, Mayor. So I also flagged this in my review of the plan as something that was concerning to me for a couple of reasons. One, this percentage is quite blunt, and I actually don't find it rather helpful. And I think there's a lot of ways that we can also determine if this city is an inclusive place to live and to work, which is not captured in this metric. And so I would much rather see it replaced with something like an employee survey, or how do we retain employees based on the culture that we have here, versus a hard percentage. And for all of the reasons that Member Wink and Mayor Pro Tem Ward bring up. So I am supportive of this amendment.
Member Anderson?
I'm supportive as well, and for the reasons already stated by my colleagues here as well, but also because I don't think that you can put diversity into to decide certain people are diverse and other people are not diverse. The word itself means that you have different kinds of people, so I don't think just defining a % diversity is really makes sense rationally ultimately. So I'm supportive of the amendment as well.
Member Member Wink.
Thank you. And I want to thank our staff for all they do, and I don't want to beat you up, City Manager's office, because I do believe that there's a tremendous amount of precedent that's labeled best practice as hiring percentages of people that look a little bit different than the reference population. But I had the exact same feeling members Ward and Nunekamp, and probably my other fellow council members did as well. So I want to just reemphasize that I want this to be a line item, but I do want it to be based on the totality of metrics or objectives that come from the consultants we've hired. Let's let that guide. I feel very uncomfortable with it alone as a metric, even if it's a placeholder. Understanding more can come later. So I just wanted to say that one more time. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Member Wink. Member Russell?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you also to my fellow council members. I actually agree with this as well. I will support the amendment because I do think even by keeping track, it sets up a precedent. I agree with that. But I agree with everything that's been said, and I like the suggestions. So thank you very much.
Any other comments from council? I'm actually also going to be voting nay on this, as I voted nay on the previous amendment. I think DI can mean a lot of different things. It could be, as was stated earlier, just race, sexual orientation, but it could also be young versus old. It could be just what school you went to. I don't mind it. I also think that the percentage, I think, is I can understand where the concern is from my fellow council members. I don't think that was the intent by staff, and I think that Assistant City Manager Dodd kind of stated the case there. I won't be upset if it gets removed, but I just don't think that that was the intention of staff, and I do want to see us move with DEI concepts into the as a city, but for this specifically, for this amendment, I will be voting nay. Mayor Pro Tem Ward.
Am I somehow confused, Mayor? Because the standard that you presented for diversity seems to include that we already have 100% diversity across our workforce.
Well, in terms of hiring practices, I think I was looking at it in terms of just HR overall. So if you're looking at hiring somebody, you're not going to state that we're only going to hire from like Ivy League schools for a specific position. I think DEI concepts can mean a lot of different things, but I think you're right. I think we're a very diverse council in terms of some of the things that we've been talking about tonight, but I think that there's a lot of different things that go into DEI overall. Member Newnenkamp?
Thank you, Mayor. I think something that would be really helpful for us when you bring this back to us is more clarity about what these metrics are. Because when we're reading this and you referenced earlier, some of these are baseline, some of these are actually things we're measuring. If this is a survey to understand what staff currently looks like, that's one thing. If it's an increased percentage, as Mayor Pro Tem Ward is understanding it, that's a different thing. And so because there's very little information given to us here in writing, it might be helpful to just add more clarity around what is baseline measurements, what is actual tracking, and then what are we measuring any of this against, because that's not included.
Is it okay, Mayor, if I just make a comment?
Yes, please.
In response to that? Yeah, so I think as I mentioned last time, working with our IT department to basically stand up a dashboard that would basically have these metrics on it. And it's something I have quite a bit of experience doing. And what's really important to me is not just putting out numbers or not just putting out data points, but doing data storytelling and also including stories that really kind of speak to the impact of these metrics. Also, being able to show data that goes back as far as we have it, so that the public can export it and look at it and that kind of thing. So we do plan to come back in the spring when as you can imagine, it's quite the project to be able to write descriptions for each of these, to come up with all that information. But please know that that's something we are working on, and the plan is to come back to council with that in March.
I support that, and I'm so grateful for that. But before we're ready for a dashboard, when we're having to make these decisions and the conversations that we're having tonight, it would be helpful for me, and I think for some of my colleagues, to have more clarity on what this actually means, because I think that we have some different interpretations. And as someone who is very strongly supportive of our diversity and inclusion work, having different interpretations amongst my colleagues about what this metric means is a little confusing for us. And so as we go through the process, I would just appreciate a little bit more clarity.
Sure, certainly we could probably get and it wouldn't be, 2 or 3 paragraphs at this point. They'd probably be just a couple sentences, but we could easily get probably by your retreat, if not earlier, just a short description on each of these. That would be totally doable.
Awesome, thank you.
Any other comments from council? Seeing none, can we please vote on the amendment for removing the percent diversity across the workforce? Did I understand that correct, or did I state that correctly? Thank you. Can we please vote?
Member Anderson?
Aye.
Member Newnenkamp?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
Aye.
Member Wink?
Aye.
Member Woodward?
Aye.
Mayor Sierra?
Nay.
All votes been cast. Let the record show 6 ayes, 1 nay. 1 nay being Mayor Sierra.
Thank you. Any other comments from council? Seeing none, can we please vote on the motion on the table?
Member Anderson?
Aye.
Member Newnenkamp?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
Aye.
Member Wink?
Aye.
Member Woodward?
Aye.
Mayor Sierra?
Aye.
All votes have been cast. Let the record show 7 ayes.
Thank you. Are we still good on time? Did anybody need a break or just keep moving?
Let's go.
All right, let's do it. Moving on to 11C3, the creation of the City Charter Advisory Committee. City Attorney Tamara Niles is asking City Council to approve a resolution to create a 9-member ad hoc City Charter Advisory Committee to study the City Charter and propose revisions. City Attorney Niles.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I believe we have a PowerPoint. There we are. The City Council in prior conversations with me directed me to initiate a charter review process such that the city would be in the position to consider revisions to its municipal charter. Our charter was adopted on July 8th, 1958, and it has been amended 22 times since by public vote. The adoption of the charter by public vote created a home rule city that authorizes us to make our own laws versus relying solely upon the state legislature to establish the laws within the city. Charters adopted in the 50s and during this time period are very detailed. They provide specific procedures and specific ways that we are to act that could only be revised by vote of the citizens. So our current charter, because it was adopted in the 50s, meets the trend of the day, and it's very specific in certain provisions, and some of them are outdated. For example, our current charter requires city council to meet at a specific location. It doesn't, and I'm sure in 1958, no one even anticipated that city council would be able to meet electronically, that we could have a city council member meaningfully participate, observe, and discuss matters before them without being physically present. A current charter assumes everyone that works for the city is of a single sex, being male, of course. And the current charter requires new members to take office exactly at 8 p.m. with no flexibility. And we saw this recently where we waited around a little bit until 8 p.m. so that our new council members could take office. So this is just an example of some of the outdated provisions that just don't comport with current practice and don't allow the city to have some flexibility in implementation. So modern city charters don't provide for significant detail, specific procedures. Instead, they provide a framework, and modern charters are referred to as framework charters that provide authority for city action, but then rely on the city council to implement that detail through ordinances or municipal code. Examples of this, for example, a modern framework charter may provide for the number of times the city council must meet per month, but it doesn't provide for where or when or how. In addition, a framework charter may provide a date new council members take office, but then city council has the discretion to establish the time, not 8 p.m. So because of these known issues, city council directed me to initiate and oversee a process to consider charter revisions and address some of these issues. Section 8 of the charter does provide a required procedure for its amendment, which requires city council to submit charter changes to the voters, and it can be initiated through petitioning the council or the council on its own initiative. So when city council first discussed this issue with me, they advised they would like for me to address the issue within 1 year. Well, if we are to address it within a year, the only way to do that is through the November 8th, 2022 election, which seems like a long time from now. But when we're considering a project of this magnitude with citizens involved, ordinances that are required to be adopted to put a matter on the ballot, we're really looking at a process that has to be complete by the beginning of July. Because that's when, July 5th, 2022, the City Council would adopt one or more ordinances calling for charter amendment ballot questions, and then July 18th, 2022 would be the second reading. So it's actually a very short window if Council wants to consider changing the charter for the November 2022 election. So this presentation is premised on meeting that 1-year deadline for charter amendments. So please keep in mind that if council wants to slow down the process and perhaps delay it to the election for 2023, we do have quite a bit more time. So I don't want council to feel rushed in this process. So options to proceed in this project. The charter authorized city council on its own initiative to draft and submit ballot questions. In addition, the city would have the option of creating a charter commission, which is elected by a public vote, a 9-member body, each member chosen by the public. Or the city could implement a city advisory committee to review and recommend revisions to the charter that city council could then consider. No advisory committee or charter commission is required by our Inglewood charter. City council could take this project on its own. In that case, city council would have complete discretion, debate charter amendments, and could potentially expedite this process, but take on quite a bit more work than your already fairly large workload. Cons, it would limit citizen input, could politicize the process as you are an elected body, and as I mentioned, you already have a very full workload. A charter commission is only required by the Colorado Constitution when adopting a new charter, but we could voluntarily elect to utilize a charter commission. This would provide an independent elected body for consideration of charter revisions, but the decisions of the charter commission are binding, so in some ways it eliminates the city council's input and opinion. You can either accept the charter commission's recommendations to put something on the ballot, or you could request that they reconsider certain issues. It does require an election of the commission, so it would delay this process, which is, again, perfectly fine if that's what the council wishes to do. But because they are elected, the charter commission would be elected in November 2022 unless we wish to hold a special election, which I wouldn't recommend, mainly because it costs $36,000 and it's quite a bit of work for the city clerk's office for a special election. Candidates running for charter commission could potentially politicize the process if they ran for the charter commission on a specific issue or to get a specific thing changed. And it's not a process envisioned in our city charter. That doesn't mean we can't use it. It's just not the process, one of the two processes that our city charter envisions. Then there's the City Charter Advisory Committee, which is kind of a hybrid. It allows the council to retain its discretion in accepting or rejecting proposed revisions to the charter. It does encourage public participation and input because City Council could appoint a 9-member board from applicants to participate in this process. It does, as I said, maintain your oversight and decision-making over the ballot language. And then it does allow City Council to consider recommendations, but you're not required to accept them. It also follows some current precedents set by the City Council. For example, the UDC Steering Committee is a committee City Council appointed to consider and propose revisions to the Uniform Development Code, and that process is currently ongoing. And creation and appointment to the committee can be accomplished fairly quickly and without any added expense of an election. There is, of course, a con, though. There's no formal election process for the committee members, so the citizens would not choose the people that provide input. It would be City Council that does so. I would recommend an advisory committee, mainly because it maintains the City Council's say as to what goes on the ballot for potential charter revisions. I would recommend a procedure for creation of the committee via resolution, then utilize the communications department to advertise and public outreach to solicit applications. Then the City Council would need to interview and appoint members to meet then 2 times per month with an expert consultant that we have already reached out to. And then we present the recommendations to City Council in June 2021 to give us a little bit of time to work through the recommendations and allow City Council to vote on whether or not to put those on the ballot. So, time is of the essence if we are to consider revisions by November 2022. I have felt that this is a short timeline. However, the consultant that has done this for multiple other cities feels like a 6-month timeline is doable and appropriate. It would require some staff work, the city clerk's office to assist with creation of the application, communications department to get the word out, and of course, some action on your part to get the word out to your constituents, encouraging them to apply to participate in this process. So we would request council direction as to how they wish to proceed, if they want to proceed now. And to that end, I have provided a proposed resolution creating a 9-member charter advisory committee, or whether council feels like this is too fast, we should slow down, and then we can bring this to you at a later date with the goal of putting it on the November 2023 election. Our charter has been in place since 1953, so it is providing a workable framework for us that we've been able to fashion and comply. So these issues aren't going to go away. We've managed to live with them. So if council feels like this process is too quick, we certainly can slow it down. With that, I would welcome any questions.
Thank you, City Attorney Niles. Member Russell, let you start off.
Thank you, and thank you, City Attorney Niles, for this presentation. If council chose to do a citizens advisory committee, would the advisory committee be able to take input from the public? Like, would they have public comment time, or just would the public have access to the committee?
Yes, in fact, I would anticipate that we would create some rules of procedure for the committee, and really allow them to decide how they wish to solicit public input. This is not a quasi-judicial proceeding such that they couldn't consider input or comments outside of their meeting or outside of their gathering. So they would have discretion to do that, and they could even include in their meetings a time for public comment if they wish to do so.
Thank you. And so if the committee, whatever kind we choose, comes up with suggestions, there can only be one item. You can't just write all the changes in a ballot initiative. Each single item would have to be separate on the ballot, correct or no?
No, that's actually not the case. I had that specific question, and I had researched it, and then I double-checked my conclusion with our expert consultant that has done this for other cities. It could be one or more ordinances. What I would anticipate is the bulk of changes would be in one, the things that we know we need to change, such as not providing for 8 p.m. for new council members to take office. But then perhaps if there's something that may be more subject to more debate, or something that may be controversial in the committee, that could be its own ballot question.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Member Russell. Member Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, City Attorney Niles. If we decided to go forward with this advisory committee, can you walk us through the timeline of selecting and appointing those members to the committee?
Yes, and as you probably saw before the meeting, we were already handed a schedule for interviews of board, upcoming board members. This is not for this committee. This is for the boards you already have. And as you can see, there are already, we were blessed to have a very large number of applicants, but I was hoping we could include additional applicants on that meeting night, but it's already scheduled to be after 10 p.m. So I would not recommend we add any more interviews. What I would propose is, if council does want to move forward, that we start outreach, close applications in January, and interview by council, and then have them appointed by the end of January, so that they could meet either starting at the end of January, but no later than the beginning of February, and then meet 2 times per month until recommendations are presented.
Okay, thank you.
Member Nunekamp.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation, City Attorney Niles. I have a question about the timeline, and you mentioned you're unsure about the 6-month timeline. Can you lay out, if we were to go to 23, what the main benefits you see for your office? I understand the consultant thinks that it's enough time, but also if we were to go to 23, would the committee, if we go to it with a committee, only need to meet once a month, or would they still meet on a twice-a-month schedule? Are they meeting twice a month only because of the crunch?
Yes. That number of meetings is required, which is why it would be twice a month, but only for 6 months. Yes, if we were to delay it, I would anticipate we would have more time to solicit applications, more time for interviews, and appointment, in which case we would probably have more applicants just because of the longer time for an application window. I would anticipate then that they would meet only one time per month, but probably for a longer period, probably for a year rather than just the 6 months. As a city attorney, I'm always hesitant to rush into anything, which I do feel like this is a shorter time frame, which is why we spent significant time researching the law, investigating, talking to various legal experts that have spearheaded such projects for other cities to make sure it's doable, we wouldn't be rushing into it, and that sort of thing. And I'm assured that this timeline is workable.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from Council Member Russell?
Thank you. So would it be possible to, if they started and were able to see a lot of things that we, simple things like the time change and things like that, that we could go ahead and put some things on the ballot in 2022, and then if there were other things, continue the committee and put more on in 2023?
Yes, that is certainly possible. The only downside I see from that is that if the committee, after reviewing our charter, recommends we should just scrap the whole thing and start anew with a framework charter, with a more modern form of a charter, in that case, we probably wouldn't need a second vote because we wouldn't be fixing issue by issue. We would address everything at the same time. So that would be the only issue I see.
Any other comments from Council? Member Woodward.
Thank you. I guess I have some questions whether the statutory cities have some sort of boilerplate through the state. And is that something, obviously we're not a statutory city, but is that a place to start in looking at, or are there other boilerplates that we could utilize that the committee could utilize?
Yes. So, of course, the Constitution is applicable to all cities, the Colorado Constitution, but then only the statutes regarding city governance are applicable to the statutory cities. So we could look at those. I anticipate it's likely we would look at charters from other cities to see how they address certain issues or provided specific authority as well.
Okay. Thank you. One other question, and that would be, is there any cost savings in going the extra year to 2023 since we have an election then to begin with?
No. As long as we are not holding a special election, I anticipate the cost will be approximately the same.
Okay.
If we do use an expert, the longer you use an attorney, generally the more it costs. So I would expect our legal expert may cost a little bit more simply because the process
Will
will take
offset
longer.
any savings.
Right.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Member Woodward. Any other questions? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve the resolution approving a 9-member committee?
Your Honor, I will move to approve the 9-member committee 11C3.
Thank you, Member Woodward. Can I get a second? I'll second that. Any comments, questions from Council? Member Ward.
I will not be supporting this tonight. Not because I disagree with the city attorney's analysis that this is a perfectly legal process, but because I believe that this is a process that should be ground through by this council. And in as much as our charter needs improvement, I think we would all benefit as a body from reviewing those areas that need improvement, discussing them, and then forwarding those requests for improvement to the general public. So I am not on board with forming this commission. I have supported past commissions of similar makeup, but the charter is a particularly politically sensitive document, and I believe that it requires special handling, which is why I will not support this commission.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Ward. Member Anderson.
I also will not be supporting this. I do agree with Member Ward, but I also think that even if we were to go down the advisory committee route, it's just too rushed of a timeline to find the caliber of a committee that I think we would need for this project. So if we're going to do the city advisory committee, which wouldn't be my first choice, then I would want more time to select that committee. So I think this is too rushed. But then secondly, I do think this is something that would, if, you know, an alternative, if we were going to think about how to get some stuff done this year, is to pick a few of the issues or some of the obvious things we could fix as council without making a huge time investment, and then do some more revisions in 2023. I don't think there's anything wrong with council just handling this over a multi-year period and just take it as a long-term project, and that'd be my preference. I have not been a huge fan of the process for I'm excited about the Title 16 revisions, but I haven't been a huge fan of the process just because council only gets a voice, is only going to end up with voice in the matter so late in the process. And I'm afraid we would have the same issue with this, is by the time we get it, we have to make a decision in July without really enough time to discuss it or make those changes as well. So for those reasons, I'm not supportive of this.
Thank you, Member Anderson. Member Noonekamp.
I'm also a no tonight. I actually think that the city attorney's recommendation for an advisory committee is something that I can support, and I think it's important in having citizen input on this in lieu of an election of a commission. But I'm just really concerned about the timeline. It's too important of a document and of a process to rush. It's a big ask of our citizens to give 2 meetings a month, and oftentimes when we go quickly, we miss things. And so I would support moving this forward for a 2023 election.
Thank you, Member Noonekamp. Any other comments? Member Russell.
Thank you. City Attorney Niles, I greatly appreciate your work on this. I do agree with my colleagues on several things, and I actually know that over probably the last 4 years that I've been on council, there has been a lot of citizen talk about certain issues that they want to address, and they have been looking at what the process is and the charter for them to move forward with that. I do believe that their city council actually can move things forward much faster than the citizens could, but I believe that if we as a council would be open to listening to the citizens, I think we might get more people out to talk to us about what they really want, and I think it's something that could happen from a grassroots level. So I appreciate the work, and thank you. I will not be supporting this tonight either.
Thank you, Member Russell. Member Noonekamp. Any further comments? No? I'll jump in here. I will vote for this, but actually the timing to me, I'm not as concerned of it coming up on the 2022 ballot. I don't mind if it comes up on the 2023 ballot. So I do like the idea of having a citizen committee be part of this and look at the issues. But at least for me, it's like I'm not as concerned about getting on the 2022. So I will be voting for this. Although some of the comments that Member Anderson made tonight, I would be in support of as well, and kind of like that approach. So. But in terms of tonight, I will be voting yes for this. Seeing no other comments. Oh, Member Woodward.
I appreciate what you said, Mayor, and I feel pretty much the same way. I will be supporting this and incorporating, I think, my colleagues' thoughts and ideas on this. And I am not thinking that with the timeline that we have, that if it can't be done for 2022 by July, it can be done for 2023. But I do want to have the public involved in this through an advisory committee. And if we're bringing up things that we want them to take a specific look at, so be it. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Woodward. See no other comments, can we please vote?
Member Anderson?
Nay.
Member Newnenkamp?
Nay.
Member Russell?
Nay.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
Nay.
Member Wink?
Nay.
Member Woodward?
Aye.
Mayor Sierra?
Aye.
All votes been cast. Let the record show 5 noes. The 5 nays being Member Anderson, Member Newnenkamp, Member Russell, Mayor Pro Tem Ward, sorry it's late, Member Wink, and it's 5-2. It does not pass.
Thank you, City Clerk. And moving on just to general discussion, start off with Mayor's Choice. So just want to remind everyone that tonight is our last meeting until after the holidays. So I want to wish everybody happy holidays, happy New Year. I think our next meeting may actually take place back in council chambers. So we will have study session. I don't think that that's finalized and that's guaranteed to happen, but so just, yeah, I beg your pardon already for the some of the issues that we may have with some of the buttons that night. So looking forward to going back into council chambers at the very least. Secondly, I did want to just extend a thank you to Dolan and Ali Marie Guyman, who own the art gallery right off of Bates and basically Galapago. So I got to go to their open house on Saturday night. Fantastic art, fantastic collages. I had a great time. Knowing that we have that caliber of an artist here in Englewood was a really cool thing to see. So I just thank them for extending the invite to me a couple weeks back. So trying to think if there's anything else for me tonight. I don't believe so. So I'll move it over to Council Member's Choice. Member Newnenkamp, get us started.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to thank everyone who was involved in the Inglewood Christmas store this last Saturday, including many of our city staff who participated, which was wonderful to see. This year, the Inglewood Christmas store, which is headed up by the Sacred Grace Church here in Inglewood and supported really by our entire community. We had businesses across the city who were collecting toys for kids in our community, and the store, which is rooted in principles of agency and dignity for Inglewood families, served over 200 families. That's 700 children on Christmas morning who are having a little bit more under the tree. There was groceries and outerwear available for Inglewood families as well, and they provided over 1,500 toys. So it was a wonderful community event and really grateful for everyone who participated.
Thank you, Member Newnenkamp. Mayor Pro Tem Ward.
A few things. First of all, I'd like to thank Director Van Rye and his staff at the Allen Water Treatment Plant and Utilities. I took a tour of the Allen Water Treatment Plant, which is not far from my house in District 4 last week. It was very informative. You can see the city's water assets on a map or in a council presentation or even coming out of your faucets at home. But touring all of the facilities, from McClellan all the way to the Union Avenue pumping station, really gave me a much better idea of the enormity of what they're tasked with doing and just how well they do with the resources that we allocate to them. I'm really excited about some upcoming projects at those plants, and I'm looking forward to improvements in our fresh water supply that we expect to see in the next few years. Secondly, I had one of my neighbors came to me a couple of weeks ago with a concern that involved another neighbor, one of these issues that tends to be somewhat sensitive. And I told this neighbor, code enforcement is the department that handles this issue. And I followed up with my neighbor yesterday and problem solved. She said that the problem was taken care of, first of all, which is an important part of the process. But more than that, the code enforcement officer that responded to her call was able to explain some more circumstances that surrounded the issue in the first place. So it wasn't a case of where there was a malicious actor in the neighborhood who was just doing this to annoy her. It was something where there were circumstances that needed to be explained to the resident that allowed them to work for a resolution that was mutually beneficial. So I'm grateful for their work, which is often thankless, and I'm glad that it worked well in this case. And the last item is just kind of an announcement. The mayor and I will be attending police roll call on Christmas Day to say thank you to our officers on a day that pretty much no one likes to work. I would encourage any other council members who are interested in engaging with our police department to talk to the city manager about attending roll call or doing a ride along. That's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Ward. Any other comments from council? Member Russell.
I would just like to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas, a Happy Hanukkah, and a very Merry or Happy New Year. And hopefully things in the new year will be getting back to normal for everyone. So thank you very much. It's been a great year, and it's been a great, 6 weeks at this point? It's great to have the new council together. Thank you, staff, for all you do.
Thank you, Member Russell. Member Woodward.
Pushed the wrong button. I said I also wish to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Holidays, and looking forward to the new year and really get going, I guess, in January. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Woodward. I was about to acknowledge the fact that you pressed the right button, but not the second time. But thank you, Member Woodward. Any other comments from council? If not, we'll move to the city manager's report. City Manager Lewis.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few things. You are correct that this is our last regular meeting in this room, and we appreciate council's patience and are hopeful that the tech upgrades in the room will really help us with our community engagement and running more efficient meetings. We will be going back to we'll still be using this room for community meetings, or rather study sessions, and it'll be set up more like it was historically with the rectangle, and we can resume renting this meeting room because we have not been able to use it at staff or for rentals, so that will resume. Teardown begins tomorrow. We're all as excited as you are. Also wanted to announce that Coffee with a Cop is tomorrow, and so if you want to be up at 7:30, anytime between 7:30 and I believe 9, but for sure before 8:30, we'll be at Nixon's Coffee House, meeting and greeting residents who would like to meet with and visit with the cop. And so looking forward to that, right across the street at Nixon's. And then just wanted to thank you all for your feedback on the strategic plan. That's exactly the kind of feedback that we need, and we hope to hear more of that. And again, just encourage you, if you have written comments and you want to submit those to me, we'll make sure and get things incorporated that can be for discussion when this comes back to council. But really, any time in the process, we want you to give us that feedback. We also are going to provide you with a link to Inglewood Engage for you to send to your constituents to really help us get the word out about the opportunity for residents to weigh in on the strategic plan. Because of all the things that you do, this is really one of the most key and important aspects of your leadership on city council is this plan, in addition to the budget process every year. So we appreciate that feedback. It really helps us. And then last but not least, I'm going to turn it over to Deputy City Clerk McKinnon, who's going to talk about board and commissions. It's a good problem to have so many applicants, but we've got a few options.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, council. I'll make it quick. I did put a draft of kind of what a schedule would look like if we did one night. I just don't think that's going to be possible because it would be like a 10:30, 10:45. So, and then we talked about even starting at 5 o'clock. That still puts us way into almost 10 o'clock. And I know before COVID, they were doing 2 nights of interviews. We had a great turnout. We had 25 applicants. And basically the first 15 minutes of the meeting is going over reappointments, alternates to regulars, and then we usually start right at 6 with interviews, 10-minute interviews. So I guess we had planned on January 10th as being an interview night. So if we want to do 2 nights, I guess that's what I'm here for, to see what would work for everybody, or if you had another suggestion.
Thank you, City Clerk. Any comments from Member Woodward? No? Member Russell?
Thank you. Actually, I would like to do 2 nights because I think it gets too long, and actually getting somebody to show up at 10 or 10:30 is getting a little late. So I think 2 nights will work best. And I'm glad for this problem.
Thank you, Member Russell. I agree with you. I would be in favor of 2 nights as well for that same reason. I wouldn't want to have somebody have to sign up for a 10 o'clock meeting. Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
I'm of the opinion that this council does not do its best work after 9:30-ish. So I would also like to split into 2 nights. I think it's just better for everybody that way.
We're getting to that point, Mayor Pro Tem.
Don't say.
Yes.
So Member Woodward?
Okay, if we are doing 2 nights, can we try and schedule the people that are applying for the same boards on the same nights? I mean,
Well, a lot of the boards, people have done multiple boards. There are some people that are asking for 3 or 4 boards. So I don't know if that would be possible.
okay.
We have a pretty standard, like we have I think that 6 or 7 questions. It goes pretty quick. I think it really turns into a meet and greet and kind of seeing if they're that right fit for that board and commission.
How do we do this now? Are there set questions?
Yes, I will. So what happens is about a week before the interviews, I'll send out all the applications to you. We have a set of questions, and then there's just kind of a worksheet you guys can use to kind of help as you're interviewing, to help you kind of like rate them. And then at the end of the like, if we do 2 nights, the second night, you would just kind of go through and kind of place people where you think you want them, and then would come back. I believe that's the regular meeting, the last regular meeting in January with a resolution, but you could always change it up that night too, and then they officially start February 1st, 2022.
Okay.
And I guess those 2 nights, I mean, I guess we're also looking for direction on, we know Monday the 10th, but what night that week would work for everybody. And we did get a big, the applicants really loved a virtual. I know we all want to be back and all, but again, we have to remember they're 10-minute interviews. And a lot of these people are just coming home from work, or they're getting dinner ready, and they really appreciated being able to be with their family, get on their Zoom for 10 minutes and go back. But again, that's up to you guys. But we did have a great outpour of support for the virtual when we did it the last couple, since COVID started. So I guess we would need those 2, the next night and how you want to run the meeting.
Sounds good. Member Russell, did you want to weigh in on the dates?
Yes, I would vote for Tuesday night. I mean, Tuesdays is always open, but I guess the problem becomes, does anybody have a board meeting on Tuesday night?
Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
I just have a question, and maybe I missed it. Are we interviewing reappointments?
We have not, you don't interview reappointments. They did have to reapply. You'll have their applications.
Okay.
They had a application, letter of recommendation, and the attendance record will be attached.
So this list that
The
we
top of-
have includes everyone, including the reappointments, correct?
Yeah, it's just letting you know what's coming in. So you have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 13 reappointments.
Okay.
And then you have 4 members that are alternates asking to go to regular members, and they've had letter of recommendations from the chair.
Okay.
And they also don't get interviewed. It would just be the new members.
And then the suggested time slots, A through Z, I assume is 26 people. That is exclusive of the reappointments?
That does not count that we don't interview the reappointments. That's only new applications.
Okay.
So from 6, yeah, basically in the past, again, you guys can change that up. The first 15 minutes has been kind of going over and asking if you guys want to move the alternate to the regular position, and then it goes into new appointment interviews.
I counted 25.
Yeah, that's all I
The
had. Thank
break
you.
kind of threw it off.
It's just my eyes. When I see the lines, I don't see 26, but apparently I'm underestimating.
Member Woodward?
I do believe we have a water board meeting on the 11th at 5.
Public library is also that night at 7.
Okay. So that's the Tuesday night? We may start running into conflicts that week then, because I believe CAC does not meet that Wednesday. So how does Wednesday the 12th look for everyone if we have conflicts with boards and commissions?
I think we may run into conflicts
I think we're going to
throughout.
run into conflicts that entire week.
Can we just, because this is an important circumstance, have a leave of absence for whatever day we pick?
I would think, because I like the Monday, Tuesdays back to back to
agree.
just knock them out. I would prefer that, and also in terms of weighing in, I would be open to virtual meetings as well for this. Member Woodward, did you want to weigh in?
No, I do not want to weigh in.
Okay.
I just wanted to make a statement there at the water board meeting on.
Yeah. I think we're going to run into conflicts that week for just about every single night.
Yeah.
Member Russell?
The only thing I was going to say, there are actually 3 council members on water board. Is it possible the water board could change the time that they meet?
Thank you. I think that's a great suggestion, and I can get with Director Van Rye about that, to either start at 4:45 and make sure all the business is conducted, or change the date.
Sounds good. Thank you, City Manager Lewis. Member Anderson?
Yeah, I was going to mention the time thing, but there's also the Sustainability Commission. But again, I think, it's okay to have a absence from that one in order to appoint a full Sustainability Commission for the future.
Right. Sounds good. So are we open to Monday and Tuesday, virtual allowed, and split up the times?
Okay.
Sounds good.
And I can, the first night, we could go till 8:30, and then the second night, make it a little bit shorter maybe, if that's good with you guys.
I'd be fine with that.
The last interview would be at 8:30, and then the second night, we'd start at 6. It'd go to about, what'd I say, 7:40, and then you'd have time to discuss at the end.
Okay.
Okay,
Sounds good.
perfect. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Anything else, City Manager Lewis?
No further report.
No, thank you. And by the way, I appreciate the fact that you consider 7:30 in the morning too early for coffee, so. Moving on to the very last agenda item, it is adjournment, so there's nothing else for council to do, so this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone. Happy holidays. And see you Tuesday, January 4th. Have a good night, everyone.